Would you like to come inside and warm up? Despite living in extreme poverty, one day I extended a helping hand to a homeless mother and her daughter in the park. Although I could barely get by myself, I don't know why I did such a thing. Then, the president of the company I worked for suddenly passed away, and his younger brother, the vice president, became the new president. For some reason, I got fired and was left feeling hopeless. However, when I got home, the daughter greeted me with a sly smile, saying, "Welcome back. You've worked hard. My name is Alex. I'm a 29-year-old single office worker. My friends from school call me Lex. I think it's a cool nickname, but I'm not particularly cool myself. I look pretty ordinary, or maybe below average, with glasses and black hair that give me a gloomy image. I can be considerate of others, but I don't actively engage with people. Above all, I'm poor. As you can tell from my living conditions, I think my place is worse than a poor college student's. I live in a shabby apartment with rent costing only $130. The apartment technically has 2 rooms, but since there's no wall separating them, it's practically a one-room. The bathroom and toilet are separate, but that's just because it's an old building. The kitchen is tiny, the floor is old, and the walls dividing the rooms are thin. While it's not like you can hear every sound, even slightly loud voices can be heard clearly. Privacy is virtually non-existent. Right now, I can hear a couple arguing next door. It's not just arguments, sometimes I hear their intimate moments, which makes it unbearable. Besides the noise from the neighbors, I can also hear the sounds of illegally modified bikes and loud music from open windows outside. So, during these noisy times, I vent my work stress in my room. I don't scream or shout, but speaking bitterly to myself at a normal speaking volume helps me feel a bit better. Expressing pent-up stress verbally helps lighten my mood a bit. Some people say writing it down is helpful, but I find speaking it out loud more satisfying. It's free and just saying it changes my mood enough. With the loud noises, my neighbors probably don't even notice, and since I'm not shouting, it doesn't bother anyone. But there's a topic that inevitably comes up at my age. It's what people call the marriageable age. Sure, I'd like to have a girlfriend. It's not something to brag about, but I've never had a girlfriend in my 29 years. Some of my classmates already have kids. But right now, I can't afford to have a girlfriend. Even if I did, I don't have the financial means to support her. The reason I'm living in such poverty is because of my student loan debt. And with my salary barely increasing, I'm living paycheck to paycheck. With just enough to support myself, starting a family feels like a distant dream. Even though I'm struggling, I'm known as a diligent worker who gets the job done at the company. One day, I arrived at work to find a group of employees talking. Wondering what was going on, my colleague James hurried over to me. "Alex, there's been an incident." "An incident?" I thought someone might have committed embezzlement, but that wasn't it. "The president passed away suddenly." "What?" "But he was fine just yesterday. That's why it's a sudden death." The president, Mr. Bellamy, was a dapper gentleman with a distinguished look. He always walked with a straight posture, looking sharp in his suit, and seemed like a hard-working man. I'd seen him around the office several times, always looking sharp and steady on his feet, making everyone believe the company was still secure. So, we all thought the company was in good hands. "Who do you think will be the next president?" "Well, it's probably going to be him, based on the hierarchy." "Him?" The person James referred to, him, was the president's younger brother, Robert. Robert occasionally came to the office, but neither I nor the other employees had a favorable impression of him. Why is he even the vice president? Because Mr. Bellamy was kind-hearted and couldn't abandon his family. But still, does he even do any work? This question left me at a loss for words. Ultimately, Robert was appointed as the new president. It made sense. They couldn't leave the president's seat vacant forever. If that happened, other companies might look down on us, and some might even try to take advantage of the situation. Even so, we were filled with anxiety knowing that Robert would now be running the company. This was because Robert had hardly been involved in the company's operations until now. I doubt he even understood how the company functioned. Normally, if you're going to become the president, you'd at least study management, even if only superficially. Our company may not be huge, but it still had a fair number of employees. Supporting all their families requires a serious commitment. Even though he held the title of vice president, Robert didn't actually do any work. Apparently, other employees had seen him frequently engaging in gambling. These activities might be fun when you're winning, but they cause significant losses when you lose. And once you've experienced a big win, it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking, next time for sure, and keep pouring money in, ending up in a downward spiral. Knowing that Robert, who had been doing such things, was the new president made us very uneasy. But there were more reasons to be worried about Robert. Oh man, I'm only feeling dread. James? I mean, there are rumors he messed up at his previous company too. Messed up? You mean he had trouble with his boss? Exactly. This was a well-known story. Robert was known for his temper and had gotten into trouble with his boss at the company he worked for before this one. And this happened just 6 months after he joined. At first, I couldn't believe it. These days, people usually brace themselves to endure the first year at a new company. Quitting after just 6 months seemed incredibly selfish. And then Mr. Bellamy, who was kind, gave his poor brother the vice president's seat. But he probably tried to make him work, too. Even if he made him do vice president's work, it wouldn't have been much good. Yeah, true. I hope he becomes a bit more responsible now that he's president. James's hope was unlikely to come true. People don't change that easily. Up until now, Emma from accounting had been handling most of the company matters. Emma was well known but shrouded in mystery. None of us had ever seen her or knew what she looked like. However, it was also well known that the former president had immense trust in her. She was always holed up in the accounting room, practically a legendary figure we never saw. I had only ever spoken to her over the phone. With Robert taking over as president, I wondered what would happen to Emma, but there was nothing I could do as just an employee. However, my worries soon became reality. Robert's policies, announced during his first address as the new president, left us all in shock. I'm the new president, Robert. I don't know how my brother ran things, but now that I'm in charge, there will be no more leniency. Anyone who doesn't follow my policies will be fired without mercy. It was an arrogant and high-handed speech, and the longtime employees clicked their tongues and muttered things like, "Stupid brother." From now on, every morning meeting will include a numerical target. Anyone who doesn't meet it will face a pay cut. Work hard and be prepared. Although I didn't say it out loud, I screamed "what" in my mind. Setting goals is fine, but reducing pay for not meeting them is sheer tyranny. Listen up. Speed, judgment, and decisiveness are essential in work. Don't drag your feet and try to rack up overtime pay. That's easy for him to say, but there are often situations where overtime is unavoidable. That's just how the workplace is. But perhaps because he was clueless about actual work, Robert would yell at the top of his lungs if the work was even slightly delayed, making him unbelievably unreasonable. Because of this, my stress was building up every day, but I just endured it. That day, after working all day, I declined an invitation to a drink with my colleagues and headed straight to the cheap supermarket near my apartment. This supermarket always had great deals for the local poor students, but just before closing time, they added extra discount stickers. Perhaps it's the supermarket's way of ensuring they sell all their prepared foods by the end of the day. But I didn't hesitate to put several heavily discounted prepared meals into my basket. I also bought a salad marked down by 80% and left the store. Swinging the plastic bag I used as a reusable shopping bag that was about to get holes from overuse, I headed home. On the way back, my attention was drawn to 2 women huddled together on a bench in a small, dark park. At this late at night? If it had just been 2 women talking in the park, I would have ignored it. But something about them seemed off, so I stopped and stared at them. The 2 women looked like they were mother and daughter, judging by their similar faces. It was around 10 p.m. Moreover, they were very lightly dressed for this season and looked quite dirty. I slowly entered the park and pretended to buy a warm drink from the vending machine near them, listening to their conversation. "Mom, I'm cold." "It's okay. Just snuggle up closer." "Thanks, it's much better now." From that exchange, I was sure they were mother and daughter. The mother looked to be in her early 50s, and the daughter around 20. What happened to them? Their clothes are dirty, but they're wearing branded stuff. I recalled the morning weather forecast I saw on the news. They said it wouldn't rain, but it would get quite cold tonight. These two were complete strangers to me. No one would blame me if I walked away. But my sense of justice wouldn't let me ignore them now that I'd seen them. Still, I wasn't sure if it was okay to approach them. I didn't want to be mistaken for a criminal trying to take women to my place. But I couldn't just abandon them either. Oh well, here goes nothing. I made up my mind and approached the mother and daughter. Sorry, I'm not a suspicious person. I have no intention of doing anything to you. This might be a bit presumptuous, but according to the news, it's supposed to get very cold tonight. I know I'm a complete stranger, but if you don't have anywhere to go, would you like to come to my place? It's a shabby apartment, but at least you can warm up. What? All I can offer is a warm bath, but I promise I won't do anything. I swear. If you want, I'll even leave the room. I just don't think it's good for women to be out in the cold, so please, calm down. My words were becoming incoherent, and the woman had to calm me down. Right. Sorry. Why did you approach us? As you can see, we're homeless with nowhere to go. Well, isn't it natural to help someone in need? What? Of course, if you think it's none of my business, I apologize. But no, it's not that. Then please, come with me. I can't offer much, but at least you can get warm. I desperately invited the mother and daughter to my shabby apartment. They seemed surprised by the place they were brought to, but I offered them the back room and let them use the bath. Since I didn't have any women's clothes, I gave them an old tracksuit from my school days. I've washed it, though it might smell a bit like mothballs. It's fine. You've already done so much for us. For food, all I have is instant noodles and some prepared meals. But that's your meal, isn't it? Yes, so let's share it. While waiting for the two of them to finish their bath, I heated up the prepared meals and made 2 packets of instant noodles, dividing them into bowls and plates. All the dishes in my poor bachelor's home were mismatched. It was a bit embarrassing, but there was nothing I could do. I was genuinely glad I had saved some unused spoons and forks. I'm sorry. I invited you so confidently, but this is all I can offer. No worries. We appreciate it. They shook their heads at my apology. Their kindness made me feel happy. After the 3 of us had our modest meal and finished eating, they introduced themselves. My name is Emma, and this is my daughter, Catherine. It's been a long time since we've had a warm bath and meal. I'm Alex. Alex, you're kind and full of justice, aren't you? Emma smiled as she said this. No, I'm just poor. But you helped us. Most people would just walk away, especially if they were struggling themselves. And I'm sure you had your reservations about inviting women into your home. It's true, I had many doubts. In this world, there are many people who would take advantage of kindness. However, Emma and Catherine didn't seem like those kinds of people. If you have nowhere else to go, please stay here. But it reassures me to see a light on when I come home from work. It's a shabby apartment, so I won't force you, but if it's not too much trouble. It's a small, old place, but it can at least shelter you from the weather. If I told James about this, he'd probably laugh and say I was too nice. Still, I couldn't bring myself to kick them out after just one day. You know, it's like finding a stray cat. Then feeling the heartache of having to abandon it again because you can't keep it. Emma and Catherine exchanged glances, thought for a moment, then looked at me and said, "We'll accept your hospitality," and smiled in relief. As planned, I gave them the back room and hung a bath towel in the gap of the thin partition to ensure privacy. I laid out cushions in the kitchenette space and slept there. I gave the folding bed and mattress to the 2 women, and that night passed. The next morning, Emma left early, saying she had some errands. I couldn't say anything if she was going out to find somewhere else to stay, not wanting to be a burden on my shabby apartment. However, Emma did not return that day, nor the next, nor the day after. So, effectively, it was just Catherine and me living in the apartment, and I felt a strange sense of contentment with this new arrangement. After all, I used to come back to a shabby, cold, and lonely room, but now I can return to a warm, lit room. It's needless to say that I started looking forward to coming home after work. Hi, Alex. I'm back. Catherine greeted me with a smile when I returned, and I smiled back. Catherine would cook delicious meals in the tiny kitchen. There weren't many ingredients in the fridge, so I'd pick up what seemed necessary from the usual discount supermarket on my way home. And she'd turn it into a meal. To me, it felt like magic. Having someone waiting for me when I got home became a turning point for me. Meeting Catherine made me realize the importance of people helping each other. A few days after, it became normal for Catherine to be waiting for me when I got home. I was more surprised than ever when I arrived at work. What the hell is this? There was a piece of paper on my desk. No matter how many times I rubbed my eyes or washed my face, the words on it didn't change. It was a termination notice. No way. With Catherine now living with me, I needed to earn even more money, but if I got fired, we'd both end up homeless. Unable to accept this one-sided termination, I went straight to the president's office. I knocked twice loudly and opened the door without waiting for a response to find Robert sighing deeply. Robert. It's you too. What a pain. What? I didn't understand his response, but I asked him about my purpose for being there. Robert, what is the meaning of this? I don't know. But isn't this termination notice from you? I slapped the termination notice on his desk, and Robert, looking annoyed, threw a few other termination notices onto his desk. You're the fifth person today. What? Yeah, 4 other employees have come barging in with termination notices like this. I don't remember issuing any of them. Is that true? What good would it do me to lie? Robert answered irritably, and I frowned. Firing me wouldn't benefit Robert. But then, who was issuing these termination notices to the employees? I had never caused any major problems, nor had I been hated or resented by anyone. Well, this is real, though. What? While I was still in shock, Robert picked up the termination notice with my name on it from the desk. And before I could stop him, he stamped it with his approval. Wait, please. No waiting. This is an official termination notice. Get your things and leave the company. Someone among the executives is probably culling the useless ones. With that, Robert shooed me out of the office like I was an animal. Returning to my desk, I saw that James also had a termination notice and was quite upset. However, since Robert became president, James had been considering a job change and saw this as a good opportunity, laughing about it. I envied James's optimistic personality as I packed up my desk. When I got home, Catherine greeted me as usual. Oh, hi. You're early today. Catherine welcomed me with a gentle smile, and I forced a smile as I told her everything that had happened. Actually, I got fired today. Instead of being surprised, Catherine gave a sly smile. Startled by her reaction, I followed her to the folding table she called a dining table, where she poured me a cup of hot coffee. Taking a sip of the coffee helped calm my nerves a bit. First, thank you for your hard work. No, it's... I knew I needed to start thinking about the future instead of wasting time, but Catherine began to speak. First, let me reintroduce myself. My name is Catherine Bellamy. Does that ring any bells? What? My last name is Bellamy. My father's name was Samuel Bellamy. What? Yes, my father was the former president of the company you worked for. I couldn't hide my astonishment at Catherine's words. More than anything, I couldn't understand how I hadn't realized it sooner. It's not like there are many people around with the last name Bellamy. After my father passed away, my uncle Robert kicked my mother and me out of our home. We became homeless. He took all our savings and everything else and stayed in that house. I knew he was a jerk, but I didn't realize he was that bad. I'm sorry. After all, Robert was still Catherine's uncle. Calling him a jerk repeatedly wouldn't make her feel good. It's fine. He is a jerk of the highest order. King of jerks. I couldn't help but chuckle at that remarkable evaluation. The day you found us, it had been a week since we were kicked out. We were really at our wits' end. That's why my mother and I feel a debt of gratitude to you that we can't hide. That's... Thanks to you, Alex, we've decided to take revenge on Robert. Revenge? He might not know, but I inherited shares from my father. Shares? And he doesn't even realize who my mother is. The fact that she wasn't fired first proves it. I didn't fully understand what Catherine was saying. What did she mean by Emma being fired? Emma, the one doing the accounting at the company, is my mother. What? No way. I couldn't help but raise my voice. Even though my parents divorced, my father had complete trust in my mother's accounting skills. They didn't work out as a couple, but they were great business partners. I remembered hearing rumors about that. Emma, who was trusted by Mr. Bellamy, was also highly regarded by the bosses. They used to say, as long as Emma is handling the accounting, the company will be fine. It's likely that Emma didn't want anyone to know she was handling the accounting for her ex-husband and thus stayed hidden in the accounting room. Also, given their divorce, she probably wanted to avoid any unnecessary complications. In the past few days, my mother has made all the arrangements. She's been laying off employees one by one to liquidate the company without Robert noticing. Now that you mention it. Thinking back, there were certainly signs. Robert had said I was the fifth person to receive a termination notice that day. Judging by his attitude, he must have received termination notices from several other employees too. My mother plans to rehire everyone she laid off once the new business is set up. What? I hold the shares. Robert has no right to run the company. Catherine smiled, exuding the confidence of a leader. I had thought of her as a sweet woman, but she turned out to be someone truly remarkable. A few days after this conversation, there was a commotion at the company. What? You're firing me? This is ridiculous. During a meeting held that day, the board of directors unanimously decided to dismiss Robert. Once decided by the board, it couldn't be overturned. Robert, you have two choices: work under me or find a new job yourself. So, what will it be? What? As I recall, your philosophy was about speed, judgment, and decisiveness, right? Hurry up and decide. Under Catherine's pressure, Robert declared his resignation from the company on the spot. He must have hated the idea of working under his niece, especially since he had been at the top of the company just the day before. He's a real pain, with pride in all the wrong places. However, Robert couldn't find a new job and ended up struggling. Feeling sorry for him, Catherine reluctantly decided to keep him at the company as a handyman. Catherine, you're so kind. I think I'm a fool, too, but maybe I took after my father. Maybe I'll end up regretting it too. Catherine smiled, shining brightly. As for Catherine and me, living together in the same room eventually led to us becoming a couple. In short, Catherine and I are now in a relationship. I finally broke my streak of having no girlfriend my entire life. I was so happy I could have danced with joy. I considered moving to a bigger place, but Catherine said she was fine with staying in this apartment. She said she enjoyed the closeness and warmth it provided. Our life isn't exactly luxurious, but as long as we support each other, we'll find our way. I believe that, and I plan to continue living with her from now on. That person is really dumb and incompetent. People like you probably still don't have a decent job, do you? My ex-girlfriend, whom I broke up with about 10 years ago, spat out these words, looking down on me. I can't imagine anyone who ran away from the important bar exam leading a respectable life. Those words made an old wound in my chest ache. But she doesn't know. She doesn't know about my relationship with the person sitting next to me, who heard everything. And I didn't know either. I didn't know the true feelings hidden in her words. I'm Chris, a 35-year-old single man. Today, I'm meeting someone at a fancy hotel lounge. I arrived quite early, so I ordered an iced tea in the lounge. Just 30 more minutes. I checked my watch and opened a news app on my phone to kill time. As I quickly scrolled through the headlines, one article caught my eyes, stopping my finger. Suspect in reckless driving incident in XX district found guilty. The moment I saw those words, I immediately tapped on the article title. I was so focused on reading the article that I didn't even notice when my iced tea was placed in front of me. About 10 years ago, I was attending a prestigious law school. Because my father was a lawyer, I naturally wanted to follow in his footsteps and become a lawyer myself. At that time, I had a girlfriend. Her name was Sarah. She was 2 years younger and attended the same law school. She didn't seem interested in pursuing a legal career, preferring to work in a regular company after graduation. We met at the school library. It all started when we happened to be there at the same time while studying. Is this the book you needed? Some important ones are on high shelves and hard to reach. Yes. Thank you. I helped her get a book she couldn't reach because she was short. Looking back, it feels like a scene from a romantic comic. But back then, I was just helping someone in need without thinking much. After that, we ran into each other at the library a few more times. Oh, hey. Hi. I was so engrossed in my studies that I had very few friends at law school and wasn't good at remembering faces or names. So at first, I thought, have we met before? But after meeting her 5 times, I started to recognize her. Can I sit across from you? Oh, sure. I'm Sarah, a third-year law student. Sarah. Nice to meet you. I'm Chris, a first year in graduate school. Since she introduced herself, I couldn't help but respond with my own introduction. So you are a senior student. Graduate school is impressive. Just the bar exam left. Well, I just started, so who knows how it'll go. The exam prep is tough. What about you, Sarah? Not going to graduate school? I'm planning to get a job after graduating from the law school. Really, that's interesting. Yes. Sorry, I'm probably disturbing your study. I'll leave now. Oh, okay. See you then. I lightly raised my hand and returned my gaze to the reference book. She stood silently for several seconds. I thought she had already left, but when she said, I realized she was still standing next to me, causing me to jump slightly. What? Will you be here tomorrow? Well, probably. But why? Just wondering. Thank you. Bye. She said that and left. From that day on, it seemed she was waiting for me at the library almost every day. I'm not here every day, and I'm not kind enough to come just because someone's waiting. I know. It's just my own satisfaction. But I can't help but hope to see you, Chris. Her words made me start to notice her for the first time. A few months later, after she confessed her feelings, we started dating. My relationship with Sarah was very calm and steady. Since I was busy with school and preparing for the bar exam, we couldn't go out often or have full-day dates. It was a healthy relationship. Although it sounds good, it was hardly ever romantic. We mostly studied together at home or nearby places like the library. Sarah must have had her own thoughts about it, but she always spent time happily without complaining, which was fortunate. As the exam approached, she frequently sent me encouraging messages like, "You'll be fine, Chris. You'll definitely pass, so stay confident." I didn't have time to respond, but I read those messages to motivate myself whenever I took short naps. Sometimes she would bring me snacks, supporting me both physically and mentally. I never thought I was the type to stay motivated because of a relationship. But I was surprised at how much having a girlfriend helped me push myself. Sarah and I, working together like a team, were aiming for the bar exam. Then, one day, as the bar exam approached, Sarah contacted me, saying there was a family emergency, and she would be going back home for a while. Half asleep, I saw the message, jumped out of bed in surprise, and called her immediately. "What's wrong?" "It's rare for you to call," she said with a small laugh. "Don't worry about me, just focus on the exam." "I'll contact you after it's over," she said and quickly hung up. I was worried but decided to focus on the exam as she told me. However, 3 days before the exam, I was walking towards the library as usual. While waiting at an intersection, I heard the unmistakable sound of screeching tires through my headphones. Then, the engine revved at an abnormal speed. I looked up at that sound, and the next moment, I was struck by intense pain and a powerful impact. In my fading consciousness, I heard piercing screams and shouts. Was I hit? Through my barely open eyes, I saw a car with a crumpled front like a toy. Judging by the number of screams, it seemed I wasn't the only one hit. But none of that mattered. The exam. I might not be able to take the exam. I murmured that and lost consciousness. When I woke up next, I was in a hospital bed. In my blurred vision, I only wondered what date it was and what happened to the exam. I tried to get up to find out, but a sharp pain ran through my entire body, preventing me from moving. Apparently, I had a pelvic fracture, and it was a close call. Additionally, I had a broken right arm and multiple bruises and cuts all over my body. Dr. Smith told me I needed complete bed rest for a while. Listen, if you try to move, your pelvis won't heal properly and it'll take longer to recover. Don't even think about getting up. You need to rest completely for now. Yes. After Dr. Smith left the room, I wondered if he had noticed I was thinking about trying to get up again. He warned me once more, and I nodded with a wry smile. When I asked the nurse for the date, she told me I had woken up 2 days after the accident. Which meant, the day I woke up was the day of the bar exam. Feeling an overwhelming sense of emptiness, I was told I couldn't get up for at least 2 weeks. So, my days were spent either sleeping, watching TV, or looking out the window. Spending time without studying for the first time in a while felt like time had almost stopped. During this period, I received a message from Sarah on my phone. She had said she would contact me after the exam was over. Protecting my aching arm, I looked at the screen, and as expected, it was a message asking, "How did the exam go?" I slowly replied, telling her that I had to withdraw. As soon as I turned off the screen, a flurry of messages came in. "Why? What happened? Are you okay?" Reading those made my head spin. Why? What happened? I wanted to ask the same questions. Unable to sort out my feelings and feeling unwell, I placed my phone on the shelf without replying. For a while, Sarah's messages were filled with concern, but I still couldn't bring myself to respond. As a result, her messages gradually became more accusatory. "If you don't reply, I won't understand anything. Why did you give up?" But at the time, those words felt like knives stabbing my chest, consuming my heart. A week passed without me being able to reply. Then one day, I received a message from Sarah saying, "You won't even respond. I'm worried, but it seems I'm just a bother to you. Let's break up." That's what Sarah sent me. At that point, I didn't care about anything anymore. Got it. I replied with just those words, and it seemed she blocked me immediately because I never heard from her again. Even after breaking up with Sarah, I stayed in the hospital for a while. During that time, the new year and the academic year changed. Sarah graduated and returned to her hometown. Meanwhile, I had earned all the necessary credits, so I was allowed to graduate and move back to my parents' house. The article I saw on the news app was about the sentencing of the driver from the accident. The suspect, a man with alcoholism, had been found to have alcohol in his system at the time of the accident. It had been a long trial, but I felt relieved that it was finally over. The accident had many victims, and there were fatalities. The trial had been initiated by the families of the deceased. As a result, it was a trial that had garnered national attention. After finishing the article, I exhaled and looked up. Seeing the condensation on the iced tea glass, I remembered ordering it and took a sip. Then, I met the gaze of a woman sitting at the table across from me. "Chris? Sarah?" It was Sarah. Even though she had always been a mature and beautiful woman, the Sarah in front of me had become even more attractive with age and sophistication. Noticing me, Sarah stood up and walked towards me, her high heels clicking against the floor. "What are you doing here?" Her voice didn't sound happy to see me. "This isn't a place for someone like you to be. I'm meeting someone." "Meeting someone? You, Chris? In a place like this?" "Yeah. This is so out of place for you." Sarah looked down on me as she said this. Even though it was true that I was meeting someone, there was nothing I could do about her comment. While I was at a loss for words, Sarah started criticizing me for withdrawing from the bar exam. "Back then, you just ran away because you weren't confident you'd pass, right? It's awful. You never replied to my messages. And when you finally did, it was just to agree to break up. It's completely inconsiderate. I truly regret that. Apologizing now is too late." She spat those words, and she was right. Running into her again was just a coincidence, but it was indeed too late to apologize now. It was just self-satisfaction on my part. However, I didn't think I deserved to be mocked with people like you probably still don't have a decent job, do you? I'm meeting my fiancé here. He's a lawyer who passed the bar exam on his first try, is great at sports, and never slacks off. Unlike you, he's a wonderful person. While it's impressive, that applies to her fiancé, not Sarah. Although I thought this, I restrained myself and said, I see. That's impressive. Seeing me nod politely seemed to improve her mood slightly. A few minutes later, I heard a man's voice saying, Sarah. Sorry to keep you waiting, and her expression brightened instantly. Alex. Alex? The name sounded familiar, so I looked in the direction Sarah was staring. And then. What? Her fiancé looked at me in shock. Chris. Good to see you. He greeted me, a person I knew well. You don't need to be too formal. Sorry, I was just surprised. Do you two know each other? As he looked between me and Sarah in confusion, Sarah disdainfully said, He's an old acquaintance. This person is really dumb and incompetent. He was originally aspiring to be a lawyer too, but he bailed on the bar exam. He ignored all my messages, didn't explain why. And I was so furious I cut ties with him. How can you trust someone like that? As Sarah continued to badmouth me, Alex's face grew increasingly pale. Before she could say more, he impulsively covered her mouth. Please. Please stop it. He pleaded, but Sarah forcibly removed his hand and shouted, What are you doing? What's your problem? With a sigh, Alex said, Chris is my boss at the firm. His name is Alex. Indeed, he is my subordinate. Sarah probably didn't know that. She looked shocked. Alex, meanwhile, was seating Sarah, saying, I never thought you'd be this mean. I didn't know. Sarah sneered, Sorry to disappoint you, but I've always been like this. It's your fault for being fooled. Alex, still pale, asked, So all the kindness and care you showed were lies? You were too easy. Just a little bit of niceness, and you'd follow me around like a puppy. I only pretended to be the woman you wanted because you're a lawyer and seemed rich. No way. I started to panic as their relationship became more strained. As their argument heated up, Alex finally said, Can we call off the engagement? Sarah's drastic change must have been a huge shock for him. I tried to step between them, but Sarah coldly said, Fine. Let's do that. How did it come to this? Thinking that, I tried to calm them down, saying, Both of you, just calm down. I'm calm. And so am I. Sarah retorted, but it was getting nowhere. As they refused to even look at each other and the tension escalated, I reluctantly spoke up. Sarah. What is it? There's something I never told you. I picked up an item leaning against the table. It was a walking aid. I started using it after the accident. Without it, I couldn't walk straight. 3 days before the bar exam, I was in a car accident. I was told to rest completely and couldn't even get out of bed. That's why I had to withdraw from the bar exam. The aftermath of that accident still affects me, and I can't walk properly without this. Sarah looked down, but I continued speaking quietly. The treatment and rehabilitation were tough. I felt like giving up many times. But I wanted to investigate the accident myself. And I decided to pursue becoming a lawyer. I couldn't take the bar exam the following year because I was still in rehab. But I passed the year after that and became a lawyer. Since then, I have been working at a law firm, handling various cases. Meanwhile, I kept investigating my accident. I knew that long ago. Sarah muttered, her voice trembling. Tears fell onto her clenched fists resting on her knees. You both knew, didn't you? That my father caused that accident. She looked up, tears in her eyes, glaring at us. I found out. My parents were already divorced and living separately, so I didn't know where my father was or what he was doing. But when I saw the news about the accident, I realized it. I heard from school friends that you were involved in the accident. I was terrified, thinking the accident had ruined your future. Then, the media started swarming our house, asking questions whenever we showed our faces. It was so hard. Being labeled as the daughter of that man made people look at me with disgust. Knowing that his blood ran through my veins terrified and devastated me. So, I decided I never wanted you to know. I thought you'd be disgusted if you found out. I was scared you'd hate me. That's why I broke up with you and blocked you. My mom and I moved away. Almost like running away in the middle of the night, and finally, we could live in peace. The truth that came out of Sarah's mouth was shocking. But, yes, Alex and I knew about that. We knew about it. While investigating the accident, I discovered the driver's family background. When I realized the connection, I wanted to contact you, Sarah. But your friends from school couldn't reach you either. No one knew where you were, so I gave up. That's a lie. Why would you want to contact me? To tell you that you didn't need to feel guilty or responsible. I knew about it too. I met you 3 months ago and started dating you, but I found out about the accident recently. Actually, today, I was going to talk to you about it. 3 months ago, Alex had been unusually restless, telling me he was pursuing a paralegal at another law firm. I didn't realize that person was Sarah, but I knew Alex had mentioned that she seemed to have some troubles. While I was investigating, Alex must have found out about Sarah's connection to the accident and looked into it. Even you, Alex. Why? For the same reason as Chris. Sarah, you always looked like you'd given up on something. That bothered me. Families of offenders often face societal scorn and self-blame, even though they're not at fault. As a lawyer, I've seen many such families struggling. So I wanted to help you. Help me? That's a lie. We were responsible for that accident too. If we had helped my father, who was an alcoholic, sought proper treatment, or taken him to the hospital, that accident might not have happened. It's the responsibility of my entire family. Meeting you, going on dates, and feeling loved made me truly happy. But I have to carry the burden of that accident for the rest of my life. I can't be happy. Society won't allow it. I have to be hated and resented. That's not true. It is. I came here today to break off the engagement. I love you, Alex, but I can't cause you any more trouble. So I decided to act like the worst person to make you hate me. Seeing Sarah's helpless smile, Alex gently pulled her close. Lawyers can't marry the daughter of a criminal, right? I wanted you to forget about me. Why are you so kind to me? Why are you kind to someone like me? That's not true, Sarah. What's not true? It doesn't matter if you're the daughter of a criminal. I was shocked to hear you insult Chris. But if it was an act to make me leave, it's different. I don't intend to break up with you just because you're a criminal's daughter. Alex, what are you saying? It may sound too convenient, but after hearing your story, I realized that no matter what anyone says, I still love you. I want to support you and walk beside you, no matter what. Tears quietly fell from Sarah's eyes. Our firm doesn't care if a lawyer's family members are criminals or gangsters. As long as they are honest and don't harm our staff. That's all that matters. Ah, boss, it's only you would say something like that these days. Huh? Boss? I told you I got recruited by a new firm a year ago, right? That was Chris's newly established firm. We worked together at the previous firm. And when he asked, I joined him. Right, Chris? Well, I guess that's how it turned out. But you were constantly hinting at wanting to join me, so I had no choice but to ask, I said with a grin. Back then, I was overwhelmed with the details of starting my own practice, managing cases, and handling transitions. I was too busy to even consider whether to hire someone or go it alone. During those hectic days, Alex was constantly signaling his interest in joining me. Was that how it was? Well, even if you hadn't asked, I would have followed you forcefully, so it wouldn't have changed anything. You really know how to plan things. You were happy I came along, admit it. Ha, you got me. Laughing like kids, it was clear I wouldn't have left behind such a devoted subordinate. Considering the whirlwind of the past year since I started my own firm, I was genuinely grateful to have Alex by my side. Now, our firm relies heavily on Alex, and I must keep working hard to ensure he never loses faith in me. So, Sarah, you don't need to worry. Besides, Alex has got a strong character and a steady mind. You can be honest with your feelings. I gave up too quickly when I couldn't reach you back then. If I hadn't, maybe things would be different, but that's another story. Alex. I'd be happy if you never gave up on Sarah, no matter what. Although, it's odd for me to say that. You two look great together. And that reassures me. As I smiled at them, Sarah broke down in tears. I'm so sorry for everything. I caused you so much trouble and hurt you deeply, both then and now. I've always wanted to apologize. I'm truly sorry. It's okay. Don't worry about it. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Sarah, I don't hold it against you. Alex might be reckless and quick-tempered, but he has a strong sense of justice and is a good guy. He's a great lawyer and an even better person, and I can vouch for that. So, please take care of him. Sarah nodded in agreement, still apologizing through her tears. Unsure how to console her, I was relieved when Alex gently put his arm around her shoulders. But Alex, now crying himself, added to the emotional scene. Wait, why are you crying, Alex? Feeling it was all a bit much, I couldn't help but laugh. Chris? A voice called my name, and I turned around. I remembered that I had come here today for a meeting. I apologize for the delay. Were you in the middle of something? Oh, no. I ran into my subordinate, and we ended up talking. Sorry about that. No, it's perfectly fine. I'm the one who kept you waiting. The woman I was meeting was stunningly beautiful. Seeing her, both Alex and Sarah stopped crying, their tears drying up in surprise. This is Alex, our firm's star, and his fiancée. Nice to meet you. I'm Sophia, the owner of this hotel. Nice to meet you. I'm Alex, a lawyer at Anderson Law Office. Nice to meet you. I'm Sarah. Sophia gracefully greeted them, her beauty causing the two of them to awkwardly respond. Actually, I had been contracted as the legal advisor for this hotel's affiliate company. Today, I was meeting with Sophia to discuss the details of that contract. Congratulations on your engagement. Have you decided on a wedding venue yet? There's a bridal salon on the 3rd floor. Would you like to take a look? Caught off guard by the sales pitch, the two of them hesitated and tried to decline, but Sophia persisted. Please, at least try the food samples. Eventually, they gave in to Sophia's insistence and, with their tear-streaked faces, headed up to the 3rd floor together. Thinking about their upcoming wedding brought a smile to my face. Later, Sarah's father was sentenced to 15 years in prison. He will also receive treatment for alcoholism. I don't know how the victims who initiated the trial felt about the verdict, but I hope it brings them some solace. Alex smiled and said he plans to support Sarah and her father as much as possible to prevent such an incident from happening again. I intend to arrange support through organizations and government services for them. As for me, work is going very well. Alex's enthusiasm after his wedding led to significant achievements, and now he's even more highly regarded than me, the head of the office. Determined not to be outdone by his diligent work, I straightened my back with renewed resolve. And then, a few months later. Alex, Sarah, congratulations. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chris. Alex and Sarah's wedding was held at the hotel we had discussed. They had wanted a small ceremony with only family, so the attendees were very few and close. Thankfully, I was invited despite not being family. Seeing the two of them smiling happily warmed my heart. Being the daughter of a criminal doesn't mean she can't be happy. Of course, if a crime is committed, it must be atoned for. But everyone has the right to be happy. As I watched the two of them exchange their vows, I prayed that their future would be filled with happiness. Here, I have your termination notice. What? For me? I was met with a sudden notice of termination as I arrived at work as usual. If I lose my job, I won't be able to survive. When I returned to my shabby apartment in utter despair, a beautiful woman greeted me with, "Welcome home, you're late today." She used to be homeless. Even in this rundown apartment, we finally had a roof over our heads. If this continues, I might end up back on the streets with her. This is the story of a man on the edge, trying to protect the woman he loves. My name is Brian. I'm 25 years old and have been with my current company for 4 years. My family wasn't wealthy, and I had a younger brother and sister. My parents never said it, but with our financial situation, it was difficult to send 3 kids to college. To make matters worse, the university I wanted to attend was private. As the eldest son, the only way for me to attend my desired university was to get a scholarship. I had been planning my future early and convinced my parents, who said they'd manage somehow, but I would handle things myself. I graduated from university and got a job right away. However, despite landing a job in my desired field, the pay was low, and I was constantly paying off student loans, living a poorer life than I did as a student. I lived in a 50-year-old dilapidated apartment, constantly turned down invitations to drink with colleagues, and led a joyless life. Recently, Mr. Thompson, the company president who was kind to newcomers, passed away. Even though the pay was low, the company held together thanks to Mr. Thompson's personality. But since his son became the new president, our wages were cut under the guise of cost cutting, and working conditions worsened. That day, as soon as it was time to leave, everyone quickly started packing up. There was likely a drinking party afterwards. I had always declined, so they had stopped inviting me. "Brian, you can work overtime if you want." I bet you weren't invited to today's drinking party either. The work I was doing couldn't progress without my boss's approval. If my boss went to the party, there was no point in staying, so I started packing up when the new president, Mr. Thompson Jr., sneered at me. This alone was unbecoming of a president, but he often targeted me, perhaps because we were the same age. "Sorry, I need approval from Luke, so I'll finish this tomorrow and leave for today." Despite his grandstanding, overtime pay wasn't even provided. I simply nodded at the new president, who seemed unsatisfied, and left the office. I didn't feel like heading straight back to my shabby apartment, so I killed some time at a nearby park. Payday was the day after tomorrow. Sitting on a park bench, I checked my wallet and found only $1.13. Even if I had been invited, I couldn't have joined the party, but it still bothered me. I remembered that the discount store down the street had a sale on non-alcoholic beer. In a fit of frustration, I decided to use my last $1.13 to have a solo drinking session. Just as I was about to stand up from the bench, a low growling sound echoed, and the person sitting a seat away from me collapsed onto my lap. "Hey, wait a minute." I hadn't noticed in my wallet-checking days, but the person next to me was a woman. Unable to react to the sudden situation, I froze, and the woman's head ended up resting on my lap. It was the first time a woman had rested her head on my lap. Frozen in place, I peered at her face. Oh wow! I thought I was dreaming. Though she was dirty, she was a stunning beauty, slightly older than me, unlike anyone I'd ever seen. The fact that I was giving a lap pillow to such a beautiful woman made my heart race. Are you okay?" I hesitated to touch her but ended up shaking her shoulder. "I'm so hungry. I can't go on," she answered in a small voice. She seemed to be all right. "Just wait here for a moment." I gently laid her head off my lap, placed my down jacket as a pillow, and hurried to the convenience store in front of me. With my last $1.13, I bought a piece of bread. I then rushed back to the park. She was still collapsed on the bench. She might be ignored because she's homeless, but she was way too defenseless. Even though we just met, I couldn't help but worry about her. "Here, take this." I held the bread close to her face so she could see it. "Food?" She immediately sat up. Her pure reaction was so endearing that I couldn't help but laugh. "Ha ha. I'm glad you're feeling better." After a moment of freezing at my laughter, she seemed to understand the situation, and her face turned bright red. "I'm sorry for everything." Before she could finish, her stomach growled again. "Oh no." She stood up abruptly, looking like she was about to run away. "Why don't you eat this and calm down first?" At my suggestion, she quietly sat back down on the bench. She took the bread, saying, "Thank you. I'll gladly accept," and started eating it with relish. Seeing a beautiful woman happily eating bread made my bad day at work seem unimportant. It was incredibly soothing. Spending my last money on this was a much more meaningful use than buying non-alcoholic beer for a solo drinking session. Helping someone in need felt like a win-win. After finishing the bread, she smiled and said, "Thank you for the meal." Despite looking older, her smile made her appear a bit younger. No, I wish I could have offered something better, But I'm broke too. Really? And yet you gave me your precious bread. She looked surprised and started to panic. Don't worry about it. Payday is the day after tomorrow, so I just need to get through tomorrow. I'm a company employee. But I live paycheck to paycheck. Please don't say that. It's impressive that you have a job and are working hard. I'm sorry for being presumptuous. And I haven't even introduced myself. I'm Mia. With that, Mia gave me a different kind of smile, one that seemed more mature. Oh, I'm Brian. And you didn't bother me at all. Before meeting you, I was about to spend my last money on non-alcoholic beer to drown my sorrows. When I joked, Mia laughed naturally too. We continued to sit on the bench, chatting about various things and really hitting it off. Though it was just small talk, it was the most fun and fulfilling time I had in a long time. The sun has set without us realizing it. I don't have a watch, so I lost track of time. I'm sorry for talking so much. Especially since you have work tomorrow. She tried to end our pleasant time together. Feeling a sudden pang of loneliness, I couldn't help but invite her. If you don't mind, would you like to come to my place? It's a shabby apartment, but it's better than here because it has a roof. Even I thought it was a bold proposal. Inviting a woman to my place. But I didn't want to part ways with her, so I was desperate. That would be an imposition, wouldn't it? She seemed only worried about being a burden and not about the possibility of my having ulterior motives or the discomfort of going to a man's place. Maybe she lacked such wariness because she was homeless? I was still worried about her. I want to talk to you more, Mia. It's been a long time since I've had such a great time. Besides, as I said before, my place is a shabby apartment. Sometimes the roof leaks, but it's still better than being out in the rain. Yes, you're right. Then, if you don't mind, I'll take you up on your offer. Mia answered hesitantly, so before she could change her mind, I took her back with me. From that day on, Mia and I started living together. Although it wasn't cohabitation in the romantic sense, living under the same roof with a woman made me nervous. Changing clothes, taking a bath, having someone else around made me a bit conscious of my actions. However, Mia naturally adjusted to my lifestyle to avoid disrupting it. Moreover, she took care of all the housework, saying, I can't just freeload. When I came home, a clean apartment and a delicious meal awaited me. More than anything, I was happy to have someone greet me with welcome home. The laundry I used to do after work was done when I returned, and my dress shirts were always neatly ironed. Seeing this made my female colleagues suspect that I had a girlfriend or was living with someone. I denied their words, but deep down, I felt a sense of joy. Mia understood my financial situation well and helped me save money. She would visit several supermarkets to find special deals and even grow vegetables in planters. She took care of many things without spending money, putting in a lot of effort. Once, I told her, you don't have to go to such trouble. Please buy what you need within our budget. But Mia laughed and said, I have plenty of time. If you can buy time with money, the reverse is also true. Coming home to Mia made me finish work faster. Just knowing she was there was enough motivation to complete my tasks quickly. Not having to do housework and Mia's excellent management of our finances meant I no longer constantly worried about money, allowing me to focus more on my job. As a result, my efficiency improved, and I received more praise from my boss. Although the new president, Mr. Thompson, continued to dislike me and occasionally harass me, I became more capable of handling it. Recently, I hear you've been improving your performance. I turned around to see Mr. Thompson standing there with a malicious grin. That day, an email detailing Mr. Thompson's alleged misappropriation of company funds was sent to all employees. It also mentioned that the new female executive recruited from another company was actually his girlfriend. The source of the email couldn't be traced, and it was quickly dismissed as a baseless prank, but rumors spread among the employees. Because of this, Mr. Thompson was in an exceptionally foul mood today. I bet I'll be his target again today. I thought immediately. The best way to get through this was to obey quietly and wait for him to be satisfied and leave me alone. Good evening. I need you to work overtime, given your recent performance. Now. I checked the clock, it was just past quitting time. Got a problem with that? Don't get cocky just because your performance has slightly improved. You're still a low-level employee because you can't do your job. He spoke as if implying he earned his position as president through merit. In reality, he only inherited the business after his father, Mr. Thompson, passed away. I swallowed my thoughts and asked, "What do you need me to do?" He led me to a musty archive and ordered me to compile data from old documents dating back 40 years. These documents, created before the widespread use of computers, were all typed or handwritten with no backup data. The contents weren't urgently needed, and if it truly were urgent, it would have been faster for everyone to pitch in. Clearly, this was just Mr. Thompson's harassment. When is the deadline? By noon tomorrow. Should be an easy task for you, right? Understood. Defying him would only complicate matters. I responded obediently and started the task immediately. Compiling this amount of data would take until the last train, even if everything went smoothly. Well, I'll leave it to you. With that, Mr. Thompson took other employees and went out drinking again. He probably thinks he can offset his bad reputation by taking employees out drinking. No one would find it strange if I didn't join the gatherings, as I never do. No one would realize that I was assigned such late-night work here. I took a deep breath and began selecting the necessary data from the vast amount of documents and entering it into the computer. The overtime work ended sooner than expected. Looking at the clock, I saw it was 10 p.m. I thought it would take until the last train, so I was glad to be going home early. Mia didn't have a phone, and, of course, my shabby apartment didn't have a phone either. There was no way to contact her in such situations. I'm home. Welcome back. When I got home, Mia greeted me with relief. It's comforting to have someone welcome me when I return home exhausted. Mia had prepared dinner and waited for me without eating. When I'm late, please eat and go to bed. I want to wait for you. Is that wrong? I couldn't argue with that. I don't seem to be well liked by my president. Occasionally, he assigns me overtime like this. It depends on his mood, so it's irregular. This might happen again. Mia's eyes widened. That's harassment. Someone in his position shouldn't be so awful. Her expression showed disbelief. I couldn't help but vent about Mr. Thompson. Exactly. He's losing the trust of the employees and is getting desperate. Since he took over, I've overheard the executives saying the company's sales are plummeting. They say the company is in danger. If it goes under, I'll be out on the streets. I said it jokingly, but Mia seemed genuinely worried. No way. You're working so hard, Brian. It felt good to be recognized for my efforts by someone, especially her. I just want to keep things as they are. How long will this life last? I have no money, but I'm happy living with a wonderful woman. I want this life to continue for as long as possible. I don't want to let go of my current environment. But someday, she will leave. Brian? She called out to me, worried about my silence. This life feels like an old tale. What are you talking about all of a sudden? Though puzzled, Mia listened without denying. Like when someone helps, and the grateful person stays to help out in return. Like the grateful crane? Unfortunately, I'm human, so I can't weave fabrics. In those stories, the woman always leaves at the end. Why are you saying this now? This life with her will eventually come to an end. But if that were the case, I would be playing the role of your wife, Brian. Ha! I'm joking. I'm a whole decade older than you. Now, let's have dinner before it gets cold. Mia deflected my question and set the table with our meal. The next morning, I was called to the executive room as soon as I arrived at work. In the presence of Executive Vice President, Thomas, Senior Managing Director, David, and Head of Human Resources, James. I was handed an envelope with the words, "We want to give you this." Feeling intimidated by the serious atmosphere, I took the envelope back to my desk. Inside the envelope was a document labeled Notice of Termination. What is this? To my shock, it was a termination notice. If I lose my job now, I won't be able to survive. I won't be able to live with Mia anymore either. This must be Mr. Thompson's doing. It's unreasonable, but I can't just accept being fired without cause. I headed straight to the president's office. What's the reason? At my sudden question, Mr. Thompson feigned ignorance, saying, "What are you talking about?" The reason for my termination. Termination? Yes, why am I being fired? Mr. Thompson looked genuinely confused. Could he really not know? If that's the case, who did this? I didn't issue this. Maybe one of the executives decided you were an unnecessary employee. No way. You have the paperwork, right? Unfortunately, you're fired. Mr. Thompson said this with a smirk, and I barely restrained myself from grabbing him. What does this man think about people's lives? I stormed out of the office. A colleague tried to stop me, but I ignored them. I found myself heading to the park where I had met Mia. Sitting on the bench where it all began, I let out a sigh. What am I going to do now that I've lost my job? In these tough times, finding a new job quickly is unlikely, and even if I do, I wouldn't get paid for at least 2 months. How will I survive in the meantime? I wouldn't be able to keep up with my student loan payments. Mia, who finally has a roof over her head, would be homeless again. Lost in thought, my phone rang several times. The calls were from the company. I turned off my phone. Desperate to take action, I went to the employment office, grasping at straws. I spent hours there, diligently looking at job listings until closing time. What am I going to tell Mia? That thought consumed me as I returned to my shabby apartment. I'm home. Welcome back, you're late. As usual, Mia greeted me. Is something wrong? She immediately sensed something was off and asked me with concern in her voice. I was fired today. What? I received a termination notice. Mia seemed to ponder this and then muttered, "That's strange." What could be strange about it? Her muttering stuck with me. Let's sit down and have dinner. I followed her lead and sat down. Even during dinner, I couldn't help but sigh, unable to enjoy our usual conversation. My last name is Thompson. At first, I didn't understand what she meant by that sudden statement. What was significant about the name Thompson? It's not a common name, but it's not particularly rare either. The company president's name is also Robert Thompson. When I looked at Mia, thinking, no way, she gave a small nod. Robert Thompson is my younger brother. What? You two don't look alike at all. That's what surprises you? Mia's remark made us both laugh. Why would Mr. Thompson's sister be homeless? Though the current president is the way he is, their father, the former president, was a kind and well-loved man. Sorry for keeping this a secret. I wanted to wait until things were more settled before telling you. With that, Mia began to explain her story. Father told us that if anything happened to him, the company should be jointly owned by my brother and me. But even before he passed away, my brother had taken all the necessary documents and was preparing to take over. As soon as our father died, he changed the company's ownership to himself. By the time I and the other executives realized, it was too late. I was thrown out without even being able to take my cards or phone. What a terrible story. Not only did he take over the company, but he also kicked his own sister out with nothing. That must have been tough. When I said that, she smiled gently. Even in such a time, you are kind enough to worry about me. You're really a nice person, Brian. Right, I just lost my job too. I wasn't in a position to worry about someone else. Sorry. I brought you here thinking having a roof over our heads was enough, but now this. I'll find another job as soon as possible, and then. I trailed off. I had no right to promise a future with her. I was just a temporary housemate. Your next job is already decided, Brian. What do you mean? Would you work at my company? She smiled playfully. Despite being older, her expressions changed so frequently, which I found charming. Actually, a lawyer looking for me came by recently. Before he passed away, the former president had created a new will without telling anyone. It stated that the company should go to Mia alone, excluding her brother from inheritance. So, Mia, you're the new president? Yes. I couldn't believe it. The termination notice you received was from my brother. Your actual job offer is separate, so please pick it up at the office tomorrow. Okay. Then, Mia sat properly and bowed deeply. Thank you for everything. You saved me and helped me return to my rightful place. I quickly sat facing her and bowed as well. No, it's I who was saved by you. Thanks to you, Mia, my poor life, which was just about getting through each day, has turned into something fun and happy. I felt like crying as I spoke. It meant we had to part ways. Our modest, happy life together would end. This is our last supper together. Mia said sadly. I'm poor and younger than you, but if possible, I'd like to live with you forever. I would regret it if I didn't say this now. I gathered my courage and told Mia. Please come to the office tomorrow. I'll be waiting for you. Instead of answering, she gently took my hands in hers, squeezing them softly. After dutifully helping clean up after dinner, she left the shabby apartment. The next morning, after a sleepless night, I arrived at work to find the office in an uproar. Brian, why didn't you answer your phone last night? I called you multiple times. As I put my bag on my desk, my colleague angrily confronted me. You missed a lot. It turned out that the executive Mr. Thompson hired was indeed his girlfriend. They discovered he was using company funds to buy her a luxury apartment, car, and brand-name goods. They're both awaiting disciplinary action. But a new president is already decided. Really? Yeah, and as soon as you arrived, I was told to send you to the executive room immediately. So, go. I headed straight to the executive room. The termination notice you received yesterday was not meant for you. There was a mix-up with the contents of the envelope. I'm sorry for the confusion. You should go to the president's office to receive your actual appointment letter from the new president. I returned the mistaken termination notice and headed to the president's office. When I knocked, a familiar voice said, "Come in." Excuse me, I said as I entered the room, and there was Mia. She looked different from the Mia I knew. Her long hair was styled up, and she was dressed in a sleek suit, discussing matters with her secretary. When she saw me, she dismissed the secretary from the room. Meeting like this feels a bit embarrassing. Once we were alone, she reverted to the Mia I knew. You look great in that suit. I'm not used to it, it feels strange. She said with a shy smile, then she switched back to her professional demeanor and handed me an official letter. Brian, I appoint you as the new executive director of this company. What? Me, an executive director? I've heard about your work from the other executives, and from living with you, I know your character better than anyone. As we rebuild this company, I need your help. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And if possible, I'd like you to be my partner in life as well, both professionally and personally. Really? Last night, I couldn't respond right away because I thought being older than you, we might not be a good match. But I feel the same way you do. Forgetting we were at the office, I embraced Mia. We then started living together, with the promise to marry once the company's operations stabilized. We lived in that shabby apartment. For a while, we continued our lives as if nothing had changed. The only difference was that our living arrangement had turned into a romantic cohabitation. The company prospered, and we got married sooner than planned. It was bittersweet to leave the old apartment, but shortly after getting married, we discovered Mia was pregnant. And we moved into a spacious condo suitable for our growing family. As a side note, after the scandal, her brother and his girlfriend were arrested for their crimes and spent some years in prison. Rumor has it they are now living as homeless people. It felt like a dramatic turn of events, like a story where lives had swapped. 25 years have passed since then, and our son is now the same age I was back then. He joined the company as my successor and works under me. Time has flown by. That day, my son brought his girlfriend home for the first time. They've grown up so fast. After our son and his girlfriend left, I invited Mia for a walk. How about starting our second life here? That sounds wonderful. The place where our old apartment once stood is now an empty lot. We decided to build a house here. This is the place filled with our memories. The days we spent in that shabby apartment are still vivid in our minds. Someone, please help. Help my daughter! In the midst of the chaotic accident scene, a particularly loud scream echoed. When I looked in that direction, I saw a woman cradling a collapsed girl, desperately calling for help. Call an ambulance quickly! The mother got clearly panicked and she was already in a state of hysteria. I had been a doctor until recently, but I had quit for various reasons. I had returned to my hometown for a fireworks festival when this accident happened. Many people were screaming, "It hurts, help me." In that chaos, I approached the woman and checked on her daughter's condition. However, this encounter would significantly change my life. Doctor, thank you for your hard work. Good job. I had just finished a laparoscopic surgery for an inguinal hernia and left the medical office to get a checkup. My name is David Smith. As a pediatric surgeon, I have performed numerous operations at this hospital. What were the results? The CT scan confirms it's a dissecting aneurysm. I see. I had always suffered from frequent headaches. Headaches were a regular occurrence for me, and I had become accustomed to living with them. However, recently, the pain had increased frequently, and since entering my 30s, I experienced headaches at least twice a week. Treating them with painkillers while examining the children. But as the pain became more persistent, I had my cardiologist colleague, Dr. John Williams, examine me, and that was the diagnosis. You've been too busy lately. Aren't you overworking yourself? The situation in the pediatric department was challenging, with many female doctors leaving due to childbirth or marriage. Recently, another pediatrician left for maternity leave, increasing my workload even more. I was aware of my health deteriorating, but with the shortage of doctors, taking a break was out of the question. I'm telling you, this hospital will soon close its pediatric ward. You should consider stepping away for a bit. The hospital had decided to close the pediatric ward due to financial constraints. Discussions were already underway to eliminate the pediatric department entirely. Some pediatricians had already left, knowing this, and either moved to other hospitals or started their own practices. Those remaining were also contemplating their next steps. Yeah. I think I'll step away for now. I was among them, deciding to leave due to my health. In June that year, the board officially decided to close the pediatric ward in April of the following year. I resigned at the end of March. With the nationwide shortage of pediatricians, I received offers from various places but politely declined, wanting to take a break from the field. I decided to return to my hometown to think about my future. It's been years since I took a train. I usually traveled by car, so riding the train was a rare occurrence. Especially the current high-speed train, which I hadn't ridden in decades. As I rested my elbow on the window seat and gazed at the swiftly changing scenery, memories of the past resurfaced. David, you should become a doctor in the future. You need to get into a medical school with a high national exam pass rate. There's no time to waste. I had always excelled academically in my hometown, so my parents and the adults around me would say, "You'll be a doctor in the future." And I naturally began aiming for medical school. How did it go? I passed. Really? That's great. On my way back from reporting my high school acceptance, I ran into my classmate, Emily, and told her the news. Now you'll become a doctor, David. It's still uncertain, there's the national exam to pass first. With your abilities, David, you'll definitely pass. However, even after getting into medical school, I struggled with whether this was truly the right path for me. Just because I excelled academically didn't mean I had a strong sense of justice or mission. I had chosen this path merely because my parents had suggested it. Was it right for me to take on a job where I would be responsible for people's lives? I actually want to be a veterinarian. But my parents insist that I have to be a doctor. You love animals, David. How's Whiskers? Oh, he's completely spoiled by my mom. Haha, is that so? If being a doctor doesn't suit me, I have nothing else. People only praise me because of my grades. In reality, no one cares about me. Without a strong desire to be a doctor, I often wondered what would be left for me if this path didn't work out. Ever since I decided to pursue medicine, I constantly pondered these thoughts. David, you'd make a great doctor. Remember when I got injured and you helped me? You were so reliable. I think people would feel safe with a kind doctor like you. She had tripped while running by the river during track practice, and I had happened to be nearby and gave her basic first aid. She still appreciated that moment. Are you going to get a job? With your grades, you could easily get into a national college. Maybe you should reconsider your path? No, I've thought it through. Thank you for your concern, Mr. Johnson. Our high school was one of the top schools in the area. Emily, a top student, had chosen to work immediately after graduation to support her single mother. If you want to do something else later, you can think about it then. If you want to come back, you can. People like you not just because of your grades but because they enjoy being around you. She was always so grounded. Unlike me, constantly second-guessing myself, she never wavered from her decisions. I had always been drawn to her steadfastness and her cheerful, sun-kissed face. But back then, I didn't have the courage to express my feelings and pretended to only care about my studies. Remembering those days, I wondered how Emily was doing now as I watched the scenery pass by. It's been so many years. Not much has changed. I exited the ticket gate at my hometown station and looked around. The video rental store I used to visit was gone, but everything else in the Rotary was just as I remembered. It took about 40 minutes on foot to get from the station to my parents' house. I walked slowly, reminiscing about the familiar scenery. This is where I found Whiskers. I approached the small forest on the nostalgic path. In high school, I had found a stray kitten, Whiskers, in this forest. Bringing home a stray kitten. What if it's sick? You need to take it back. I begged my parents to let me keep the kitten I had brought home, but they were initially strongly opposed. However, I couldn't abandon the tiny kitten that fit in the palm of my hand, so I persisted in asking to keep it. Eventually, my relentless pleading wore them down. And they reluctantly agreed to let me keep the kitten on the condition that I took full responsibility for its care. Mom, is dinner ready yet? Wait a little longer. I'm cooking now. Mom, why are you still holding Whiskers? I'm hungry. Shh. Be quiet. Whiskers is sleeping right now. Whiskers was happily resting on my mom's lap, enjoying being petted under the chin. Less than a year after we started keeping the kitten, my mom fell completely in love with Whiskers and took over its care. Mom, you told me to take care of it, but now you won't even let me touch it. You used to tell me not to let it into the living room. And now you watch it run around the house with a smile. People can really change, can't they? Whiskers lived happily in our home for over 10 years, spoiled by my mom. During my busy internship, Whiskers passed away. I found out from an unexpected early morning call from my mom. Mom, what is it? It's so early, I was up late last night and I'm still sleepy. Sniff. David. Whiskers passed away. I remember my mom crying on the phone for several minutes. She called early that morning, crying her heart out. As I reminisced about those old days, I realized I had arrived at my parents' house. Welcome home. You got here sooner than I expected. My mother, who greeted me, had more white hair and a slightly hunched back. She seemed to have aged a bit since Whiskers passed away. Where's Dad? He's at work right now. Though my father had retired, he continued working on a re-employment basis, constantly complaining about the significant pay cut. From that day on, I decided to relax at my parents' house for a while. By the way, David, isn't Robert your classmate? He opened a cafe last year. You should drop by if you have time. Robert? He opened a cafe? Robert was a high school classmate and a good friend for the first and second years. Unlike me, who wasn't in any clubs, he was a short-distance runner in the track team and incredibly fast. I'll go check it out and see how he's doing as a cafe owner. With a laugh, I left my parents' house and walked leisurely to Robert's cafe. Is this the place? Haha, what a stylish shop, doesn't seem like him at all. I opened the door with a strawberry red exterior and a harmonized wooden door, triggering an antique doorbell to chime. Welcome. The voice that greeted me from the counter is Robert, now looking like a grown man. Long time no see. How have you been? You? David, is that you? Wow, it's been ages. Hey, Ashley. It's David. David's here. Wow, David, long time no see. You've grown up. Ashley, another classmate, emerged from the back. We had been particularly close in high school, often hanging out together. Ashley? Wow, you haven't changed at all. Right? Still as pretty as ever, don't you think? Yeah, you're right. Haha, if you haven't changed, it means you haven't grown at all. What? Like I don't want to hear that from someone with a receding hairline. What did you say? Seeing this scene reminded me of the past. In high school, the two of you always fought, and we always had to step in to stop you. Emily and I. By the way, since you two are together, does that mean? Yeah, we got married. She insisted on staying by my side, so I had no choice. Oh really? Who was it again that said we'd walk hand in hand even when we were old? Even back then, it was obvious that the two of them liked each other, despite their constant bickering in the classroom. They couldn't express their feelings honestly, so they communicated through their arguments instead. In a way, I envied that. I couldn't express my feelings, nor could I argue. I always pretended not to care about the one I liked. Hey, there's a fireworks festival by the riverbank tomorrow. Let's go together. Wow, they're still holding that festival? Yes, we go every year. Come with us, David. Oh, I have something nostalgic for you. Ashley went to the back of the shop and brought out a photo. Look, remember this? It was a photo from the high school fireworks festival, showing the four of us. Next to Emily in her summer dress, I was smiling awkwardly. Back then, the four of us went to many places. You two always stopped us from fighting. By the way, David, why didn't you meet Emily on graduation day? Oh. I had to meet one of my dad's acquaintances. I forgot about it. That reason was true, but in a way, it was also a lie. I wanted to go that day, but I was afraid to face reality and used my father's appointment as an excuse to run away. As these memories flooded back, the events of that day replayed in my mind. David, can you make some time today? I think I can. Okay, I'll be by the riverbank. In truth, I didn't care about meeting my dad's acquaintance, I wanted to see Emily. Dad, can I go out for a bit today? I have something to do. What are you talking about? The son of my acquaintance is your senior at the college you're attending. We're going to get some information. Hurry up and get ready. It'll only take a little while. Don't make me repeat myself. Hurry up. One reason was that I simply couldn't defy my father back then. Emily waited alone until 8 p.m. that night, thinking she had to tell you how she felt or she'd never get another chance. What? I remember the meeting was supposed to be in the afternoon. She waited that long? I was so mad that you stood Emily up, David. I went to your house several times. I remembered my mom mentioning something during my internship. I had moved away to attend a distant college right after high school. Ashley often came to my house asking for my whereabouts. But my mom, thinking it would disrupt my studies, never told her. Back then, if we had the convenience of phones like we do now, I could have explained why I couldn't meet Emily. So, what's Emily up to now? She got a job right after graduation and had a shotgun wedding with someone she met at work, but they soon divorced. And it's all your fault. David! Hey, cut it out. David had his reasons. But it's true. A shotgun wedding? Hearing that phrase made my blood run cold. Emily was really down after not seeing you at graduation. She met someone at her job who was kind to her, and they started dating. Ashley looked down, hesitant to continue. She got pregnant a few months into the relationship. She even came to me for advice, but I didn't know what to say, so I told Robert instead. I felt an intense shock. Hearing about the shotgun wedding and pregnancy made my chest tighten with pain. They got married quickly, but the guy turned out to be a player. He was cheating and even hit her. They divorced within 6 months. As Ashley said, maybe it was really my fault. For such a solid person like Emily to let someone like that into her life. Emily came back 3 years ago and lives here with her child. Her kid goes to an arts high school. So she's here. We've only seen her once since then and haven't met again. Since she's been working hard as a single mother to support her high schooler, We've been mindful and haven't reached out to her. You probably have a lot on your mind, but she's doing her best. Just leave her be. Yeah, I understand. By the way, doctors make good money, right? Our cafe keeps us busy but doesn't make much. We started this cafe because we wanted to, not to make money. But I'd like to travel abroad. Come on. As usual, the couple started bickering, and I stepped in to mediate. Then came the day of the fireworks festival. Robert, Ashley, and I went to the riverbank. It's just as crowded as ever. Maybe more than last year. This normally spacious riverside was now packed with people. Hey, I want a cotton candy. You've always liked that, haven't you? As night fell, the lanterns lit up the festival stalls. Amidst the laughter of people and the lively shouts of vendors, the three of us enjoyed the festival atmosphere while eating cotton candies. The best view is from that bridge, but it looks like that's not an option today. Robert looked disappointed as he saw that the bridge was already crowded with people. Let's sit here. Ashley quickly claimed a spot on the riverbank just big enough for the three of us. Maybe I should have bought some beer. Should I go get some now? It's too late now, let's do it later. As they were talking, a sudden, deafening boom echoed, sending a shockwave through our bodies. Countless sparks exploded in all directions, lighting up the entire area. The crowd erupted in cheers. No matter how old I get, the sound never gets old. As Robert watched the fireworks, Ashley nestled close to him. You two get along pretty well, don't you? I smiled as I watched their happy faces illuminated by the fireworks. David, why don't you come over for dinner tonight? Ashley's cooking is pretty good. Come on, flattery won't get you anywhere. Suddenly, the sounds of people screaming filled the air. Ah! Oh my God! What's going on? We looked towards the source of the noise and saw that a stall near the bridge had been blown apart. Flames were rising from some of the stalls. I saw it! A firework shot sideways and hit that stall. A witness was shouting about what had happened. Later investigations revealed that a misfired firework had exploded sideways from its tube, hitting the stalls near the bridge. Looking at the bridge, I saw several people lying on the ground. I'm going over there. I pushed through the panicked crowd towards the bridge. Excuse me, please let me through. When I finally reached the bridge, I found debris scattered everywhere and many people lying injured. Ouch, ouch, it hurts, it hurts. Her clothes are on fire. Somebody help putting it out. What are you doing? Call an ambulance. There were people bleeding from their faces, some desperately trying to extinguish the flames on their clothes, and others who seemed unconscious from severe head injuries. It was like a scene from hell. Sorry, I'm taking these. I grabbed several large water bottles from a nearby stall and poured water on a burned child. With so many injured, I didn't know where to start, so I decided to help the children first. It hurts so much. It's hot, help me. Amidst the groans of pain, I worked frantically. Damn it, there are too many people. I can't handle this alone. David! We'll help too. Robert and Ashley called out as I poured water on a child's burns. Thanks. Robert, check on the people who aren't moving and see if they're conscious. Ashley, bring all the water bottles you can find. Got it. I'll go get it. Other bystanders also started helping on their own. Someone, please help. My daughter. My daughter got injured. A woman's voice shouted loudly amidst the chaotic scene. Looking in that direction, I saw a woman holding a collapsed girl, desperately calling for help. Where did it hit? Her arm. Her arm is burning. When I sat down in front of the girl to examine her arm, I saw that the high school-aged girl's right arm was swollen and red, with the skin blackened and charred. This burn. It's severe. I looked around for something to use. Then I spotted some unused aluminum foil that had been blown from a stall. Ah, it hurts. It hurts so much. Just hang in there for a moment. Since the burn was extensive, I used the aluminum foil to perform a makeshift dressing to prevent infection. Oh no, what if her arm stops working? We need an ambulance. Samantha. The mother got clearly panicked and she was already in a state of hysteria. Ma'am, please calm down. Your daughter's burn isn't severe enough to cause her arm to stop working. Who are you? Why are you wrapping her in aluminum? Call an ambulance now. The mother, her hair disheveled, was unable to calm down. What should I do? Samantha. Samantha. David, I got some ice from the shaved ice stand. Hey. Emily? Ashley handed me a bag of ice and then called out to the woman by name. Ashley? Ashley. Samantha is. Emily, holding her daughter and crying uncontrollably. Emily, David is a doctor. You're in good hands. David. Emily, her face wet with tears, looked at me in shock. David. Why are you here? I'll explain later. For now, we need to get her to the hospital for treatment. Just then, several ambulances arrived, and I went to the hospital with Emily. Upon arrival, Samantha was immediately taken to the operating room for treatment. A few minutes later, Dr. Anderson informed us that she would need to be hospitalized for further treatment. Is Samantha going to be okay? Will her arm move properly again? She'll be fine. There will be scars, but with rehabilitation, she'll regain movement in her arm. Relieved by Dr. Anderson's words, Emily collapsed onto the bench in the hallway. The burn is severe, but it could have been much worse. If the firework had hit directly. If something happened to Samantha, I wouldn't be able to go on. Thank goodness, really, thank goodness. In the quiet hospital hallway, Emily, hunched over and dejected, looked very different from the healthy image I remembered. She was thin and appeared very fragile. Her daughter must be her only reason to live. During my time as a resident doctor, I encountered many cases like this. I've witnessed the heart-wrenching cries of parents who lost their children despite our efforts. Even though I don't have children, being in those situations made me feel crushed by my own helplessness. I'm sorry. I didn't recognize you, David, and I said some harsh things. It's okay. I didn't recognize you either. Anyone would be frantic with their child in that condition. I couldn't think straight and froze up. If you hadn't been there, I would have lost it completely. Thank you, David. I just did what anyone would do. Let me take you home. You need to prepare for her hospital stay. I called a taxi and took her home. You must be surprised to see I have such a big kid. In the taxi, Emily suddenly started to talk. I had a child with a guy I met at work after graduating. We got married quickly, but he had a cheating habit. We divorced within a year. Since then, it's just been me and my daughter. I remembered Emily saying she wanted to get a job right after high school to support her mother. How's your mom? She passed away 3 years ago. She moved in with me after my divorce, but she got sick. By the time we found out, it was too late. Seeing her so lonely brought back memories of the past. Emily, are you going to college? No, I'm going to get a job. I want to become a sports trainer and surprise my mom by working with famous athletes. Back then, Emily was on the track and field team with Robert and was a long jumper. She wanted to become a trainer to make her sports-loving mother happy. She was always tanned, active, and cheerful. But now, Emily looked like a woman exhausted by life. The sparkle she once had was completely gone. She must have been through a lot. Hey, if there's anything I can do to help, don't hesitate to ask. I'm planning to stay at my parents' place for a while. What? I told her I would support her, but I couldn't look her in the eyes and turned to gaze out the window. David, you visited me again? Yeah, I was worried about you, Samantha. How is she? It still hurts, but I can lift my arm a bit now. Look. Ouch. Hey, don't overdo it. It's not fully healed yet. Ha ha. Samantha scratched her head with her other arm, wincing from the pain of moving too quickly. Since Emily worked hard during the day, I frequently visited Samantha in the hospital. I'm terrible at math. Can I stop now? Nope. Even if you're missing school, you need to learn the basics. Plus, math is used in art too, so you need to master it to create good work. Art doesn't use math. While Samantha was hospitalized, I tutored her during my visits. but she often grumbled when it came to her least favorite subjects. David, thank you so much. Samantha seems to be smiling more these days. She says she's happy you help her with her studies. Haha, she complains but still studies. Knowing I was the one who helped her, Samantha seemed to have opened up to me. I often updated Emily on Samantha's progress after she finished work. Whenever I visit her in the hospital, she always talks about you. She asks about your favorite foods, your favorite books, and what kind of women you like. I just listen and nod since I know you pretty well. Haha, everything I tell Samantha gets reported back to you. Emily, really, if you need anything, don't hesitate to ask. I'm here for you. Thanks. Just having you nearby gives me strength. It really helps a lot. Looking into Emily's eyes at that moment, my heart raced and I felt my feelings for her growing stronger. Hey, Samantha? One day, as I visited Samantha, I found her sitting on a bench outside. You're out today? The weather is nice. It feels good to get some fresh air, right? But for some reason, she seemed down. I noticed she had a notebook in her hand, probably for drawing. Oh, you're already practicing drawing again. That's great. I sat beside her, but she didn't look up. Hey, what's wrong? Are you worried about something? I can't do it anymore. My drawings are terrible, and I can't apply any strength. What if I can't draw anymore? What will I do then? She showed me her drawing, which didn't meet her expectations. This realization had deeply shocked her, filling her with anxiety. If this continues, she might end up not going back to school or worse, falling into depression. You don't need to rush. With proper rehabilitation, your strength will return. You'll be able to draw plenty once you're back in school. I am doing it. But rehab is so painful that I can't keep up. I see. Rehab must be really tough for her. Drawing is what makes school fun for me. If I can't draw, no one will pay attention to me at school. I tell Mom I'm okay with a smile. But I know I won't be able to go to college. I can't do it anymore. Trying not to worry Emily, she must have forced herself to smile until now. She broke down, burying her face in her hands and crying. Samantha originally loved drawing and had entered an art-focused high school aiming to get into an art college. Her strong-willed behavior to avoid worrying her mother reminded me of how Emily was in high school. Even when she wasn't feeling well, Emily never skipped activities and pretended to be fine so her mother wouldn't worry. They really are mother and daughter. I'll help you until you can draw properly again. Let's work hard together, okay? I'll help with the rehab too. Besides, everyone likes you not just because you can draw, but because they enjoy being with you. Don't worry, everything will be all right. I found myself using the same words Emily had once said to me to encourage Samantha. You'll do the rehab with me? Yes. I'll be by your side until you can move your arm again. Let's do this together, okay? Okay. At that moment, I had no idea that Emily was watching us from the shade of a nearby tree. Ah. All right, keep going. Just 3 more times. Since then, Samantha had been working hard on her rehabilitation. She no longer said negative things and continued her rehab diligently. Watching her struggle through the pain to lift her arm, I found myself encouraged by her determination. I felt my desire to work with children as a doctor once again growing stronger. Congratulations on your discharge, Samantha. Congratulations, Samantha. Thank you. Blushing and smiling shyly, Samantha got into the taxi with Emily and me. Her rehab had gone well, and although the burn scars remained, her arm could move as it did before. From now on, she'll only need outpatient care. This means I won't have a reason to see Emily as often. Let's celebrate your discharge today. Samantha, you can choose whatever you want to eat. Really? Yay! We went to an Italian restaurant at Samantha's request, and while we waited for our food, we had some light conversation. Were you and Mom close in high school? Did you ever think about dating her? Whoa! What are you saying all of a sudden? Samantha's sudden question almost made me spit out my water. I think you two would be a good match. Stop saying silly things, or I'll really get mad. Seeing Emily turn bright red, Samantha grinned mischievously. Hey, our food is here. Let's eat. Changing the subject, huh? I quickly diverted attention to the food that had arrived. After a while, Samantha brought up another surprising topic. I want David to be my dad. David, how do you feel about my mom? What? Gasp. Emily made a strange noise while I almost choked on my pasta. Looking at Samantha with teary eyes from my mishap, I saw her staring at me seriously. My mom talks about you with such joy. I've never seen her so happy before. I think she must like you. Since I don't have a dad, I thought it would be great if you could be my dad. So, what do you think? Both Emily and I were speechless, our faces turning red. Samantha's words gave me the courage I needed. I decided to face Emily and speak up. If you can forgive me for what happened back then. Just as I began to speak, a sudden, intense pain shot through my head. This pain was different, far worse than usual. David? What's wrong? Mom! He collapsed. With a loud crash of a falling plate, I collapsed to the floor. David! David! After that, I lost consciousness. When I came to, I found myself lying in a hospital bed. An IV was attached to my arm, and my head throbbed slightly. Looking around, it seemed I was in a private room. David? Then, I saw Emily's face peering down at me. Emily, what happened to me? You collapsed at the restaurant. I didn't know what to do. Apparently, I had passed out at the restaurant and had been brought to the same hospital where Samantha was admitted. The doctor said you'll be fine if you rest for a while. Thank goodness. I was so scared of what might happen to you. I've had a condition with my head for a while, so you don't need to cry so much. Emily's tears kept streaming down her face, and she sobbed uncontrollably. You cried when I told you about Whiskers passing away too. You were saying something at the restaurant. What was it? Emily, her eyes red from crying, asked me. There's nothing to be afraid of anymore. Don't let it end in regret. Just tell her how you feel. I urged myself inwardly to express my feelings clearly. I've been attracted to you since high school, Emily. But I never had the courage to tell you. If you can forgive me for what happened back then, I'd like to stay by your side. Emily started crying again, unable to speak. You don't have to decide right away. When you're ready, let me know. Oh, right, it's hard to decide anything while I'm in this state. Have you woken up, David? I looked towards the voice and saw Dr. Anderson and Samantha entering the room. Your condition is temporary, so don't worry. I've already explained everything to you, and it's not serious. Once you've recovered, please join us as a part-time doctor. Yes, thank you. As Dr. Anderson and I talked, Samantha whispered something to Emily. David is going to be a doctor here. Here? During Samantha's rehab, I had spoken with Dr. Anderson about working at this hospital. Given the shortage of pediatricians, the hospital was eager to have me, and the arrangements had been made quickly. That's great, Mom. David just confessed to you, didn't he? What? You heard of it? Sorry, we didn't mean to eavesdrop, but Samantha wouldn't let me into the room, so we overheard. Realizing that both Samantha and Dr. Anderson had overheard our conversation at the door, Emily and I fell silent with embarrassment. All right, next. Oh, ha ha. Okay, call her in. Samantha. When the nurse called, Samantha opened the door and entered the examination room. Samantha, you're in college now. You can go to a regular dermatologist. My doctor is Dr. Smith, and that's fine with me. Samantha, smiling, showed she could move her arm as before. As a result for her hard work, she had been accepted into an art college. Art colleges are more expensive than regular ones. Although I offered to pay for her tuition from my savings, Emily insisted on using her own savings, along with the money left by her mother, to cover the costs. let me do something for you too. So now, I'm helping support their living expenses. After Samantha was discharged, she underwent skin graft surgery at a college hospital through my connections. Now, she comes to me for follow-up checkups. Let's arrange for another checkup at the college hospital next month. Yes, Dr. Smith. Also, I'm sure you know, but today is Mom's birthday. I know. I'll come home as early as possible, so keep the preparations a secret from your mom. Okay. Leave it to me. With a happy smile, Samantha left the examination room. You have a lovely daughter. Yes, she's become quite the talker lately, always getting the better of me. After I was discharged from the hospital, I once again conveyed my feelings to Emily. I've always loved you too. Holding Emily quietly, I decided never to regret anything again. Although Samantha says she's fine with us getting together now, we've agreed to make it official once she becomes independent. Please call the next patient. Yes, doctor. At night, picturing Emily's face smiling happily after receiving her gift, I switched my mind to the pediatrician. I placed the stethoscope on the belly of a crying baby. What? Where are my clothes? You stripped me naked. You saw my body. How could you? Oh no. I was at the company's year-end barbecue. I went to look for the company president's secretary, Emily, who had disappeared, and found her drowning in the river. I quickly took off her clothes. To prevent her body temperature from dropping, put my jacket on her, and held her lightly, rubbing her back. After a while, she slowly opened her eyes, but when she saw me, she started to struggle. No! Let me go! Let go of me! She shouted as she hit me on the head. Although she regained consciousness, it seemed there was some misunderstanding. A few days later, I was called to the president's office. As I entered, Mr. Johnson, the president, looked at me solemnly and said, "You need to take responsibility for knowing her secret." Understood? His words made me turn pale. The train will be arriving on platform 3. Please stand behind the yellow line. Wearing an unfamiliar suit, I waited for the train as the announcement played and the train approached. My recent workouts seemed to be paying off, as the suit felt a bit tight around the chest. Today is my first day at the new company I was recently hired at. I can't wait to see what new experiences await me. I worked hard during my 4 years at university to gain the necessary knowledge in my field, and finally got a job offer just before graduation. As the train doors opened, a crowd of people exited. Those waiting on the platform boarded one after the other, and I was pushed to the center of the crowded train. The train was packed. I've heard about the rush hour, but this is tougher than I imagined. Pressed in by the crowd and unable to move, I locked eyes with a man standing diagonally in front of me. I hadn't done anything, yet he kept staring at me. I stared back at him, and eventually, he looked away. I have a rule. When I make eye contact with someone, I never look away first. Even though I'm in my early 20s, I never back down from anyone. I always stay unemotional, strong both mentally and physically, and never compromise. That's my way of life. I started working out in college to build my body for this reason. I've never been interested in other people. I have no close friends and am used to being alone. This was largely influenced by a certain person. He was an actor, now deceased. I wanted to be more like him, so I wandered around the city wearing clothes similar to what he used to wear in his old shows. Additionally, I related to the life depicted in his starring films and started reading the original novels, becoming deeply immersed in the hard-boiled world. In middle school, while the boys talked about games and anime, and the girls shared pop star gossip and magazines, I always felt sick watching them. Same old stories every day. Pathetic. Annoyed by the noise, I'd read a book through the boring break times. Being a loner in class, I never sucked up to the popular kids, which made them dislike me. But on the other hand, some girls seemed to find my defiant attitude appealing and I had a certain level of popularity. However, I wasn't interested in the girls in my class, and I reluctantly dated a few who confessed to me just to get them off my back. Naturally, those relationships didn't last long. Even when dating, I wouldn't initiate conversations during breaks, and only went out on dates when invited by them. I never made an effort to spend time together. As I continued these kinds of relationships, the girls began to express their dissatisfaction. I'm glad you're not a people pleaser, but it's sad not being treated special. As these complaints grew, my reputation as a cold guy spread, and eventually, no more girls approached me. In high school, I started working part-time, and saved up to buy a leather outfit and sunglasses. I got a perm and mimicked everything, from his way of speaking to his mannerisms. At that time, I was completely immersed in becoming my idol actor. I wore sunglasses to school even in high school. I secretly got a motorcycle license without telling my parents and planned to commute on it, but they found out just before I bought the bike. I had already broken school rules and had been frequently reprimanded by my homeroom teacher for my behavior, which caused my mother to face a lot of criticism from our relatives. Your son is a misfit. You completely failed at parenting. My mother would cry and berate me. How can you act so nonchalant? Do you have any idea how I feel every day? But her words didn't affect me at all, and I chose to ignore her. In an effort to help, my father often took me to counseling sessions, but the response was always the same, nothing abnormal. Just a personality issue, with no solutions offered. By the time I graduated from high school, my parents had completely given up and avoided interacting with me. There was someone who moved me emotionally for the first time. It was Owen Johnson, the CEO of a certain IT startup. In his 30s, he was renowned for his vast knowledge and impressive skills, rapidly growing his company and earning a reputation as one of the best in the industry. Mr. Johnson once said in an interview with some magazine, "A man should relentlessly pursue his dreams." That's how I got to where I am today. I was captivated by his words and deeply wanted to work under him. At the same time, I saw in him a way of life I aspired to. From his perspective, what I'm doing probably looks like a child's fantasy. When I'm in front of him, I can't help but feel immature. I wanted to learn about life as a man from him. With a strong desire to be recognized by him, I dedicated myself to my work. The company had a small but highly skilled team, and everyone seemed exceptionally capable. However, I was only interested in Mr. Johnson and focused on my own pace of work. Because Mr. Johnson aimed for a friendly workplace, no senior employees criticized my unsociable nature. Mr. Johnson was close to all the employees and often hosted social gatherings, which everyone voluntarily attended, showing their admiration for him. There was always a crowd around him, leaving no room for me. But I believed that as long as I was recognized for my work, it didn't matter if I couldn't get close to him outside of work. That initial mindset began to change due to a certain presence. A few months after joining the company, Mr. Johnson hired a young and beautiful secretary named Emily. Since her arrival, Mr. Johnson never left her side, making it impossible for me to get closer to him, and I couldn't help but see her as a nuisance. Moreover, Mr. Johnson called her by her first name, Emily. They were always together, sparking rumors among the employees that they were dating. In December, Mr. Johnson invited us to his vacation home for a year-end party. A senior colleague mentioned that this trip was an annual tradition, and that the company owned the vacation home as part of employee benefits. As a first-timer, I was thrilled. Staying at a vacation home? Awesome! On the day of the party, employees with cars gathered at the meeting point, giving rides to others. As usual, I showed up in a leather outfit, riding a cruiser I bought on loan. The employees were captivated by the sound of my bike as I arrived. "Robert, is that you?" I thought it was a biker gang. "Looking good, Robert." "Wow, you look so different," I was surprised. Ignoring the admiring comments, I approached Mr. Johnson. "Good to see you, sir." "Wow, you're looking sharp. That outfit suits you." "Thank you." Emily was still beside him as usual. Is she glued to him since morning? It seems I'm not the only one thinking that. The female employee who adored Mr. Johnson, along with her juniors, looked at Emily with suspicion. Those three are always cold to Emily. Since she joined the company, Emily has been trying to get along with the female employees, actively speaking to them whenever they meet. However, these three respond curtly or sometimes ignore her completely. Among them, the leader, a woman in her 30s, sees Emily as an enemy. "Why is she in Mr. Johnson's car? It ruins my morning." She glares at Emily from a distance, filled with hostility. I can't stand this petty drama between women, I thought, glancing at the three as I got on my bike. This secluded vacation home, surrounded by distant mountains, had a cool, refreshing atmosphere. The employees parked their cars and started unloading their belongings. I looked over to see Mr. Johnson escorting Emily into the vacation home with his hand on her back. Is he really infatuated with such a young woman? Feeling a bit disappointed, I started unloading the barbecue supplies from a senior colleague's car. After putting my belongings in the assigned room, I had some time before the barbecue, so I decided to take a walk around the area. The leaves on the surrounding trees rustled with the wind, creating a peaceful ambience alongside the chirping birds. As I walked, I heard the sound of flowing water ahead. Standing by the riverbank, the gentle flow of the river and the birds' songs were soothing to my ears. Just being by the river refreshed my mind. After spending some time by the river, I returned to the vacation home to help prepare for the barbecue. As evening approached and the birds quieted down, the barbecue began. I was in charge of grilling, continuously cooking everyone's food on the grill. Everyone was enjoying themselves, chatting cheerfully with drinks in hand. I wanted to talk to Mr. Johnson outside of work, but he was, of course, surrounded by the female employees, so I couldn't. Mr. Johnson is as popular as ever, a senior employee muttered beside me, as I continued grilling meat. After a while, Mr. Johnson's phone rang, and he stepped into the vacation home while talking on it. A few minutes after he left, I noticed the three female employees who had been glaring at Emily earlier were now talking to her. Curious, I watched as they talked for a while before the four of them disappeared somewhere. The other employees didn't notice their absence and continued partying. Once I finished my grilling duties, I waited for Mr. Johnson to return, but he didn't seem to be coming back, so I decided to take a walk around. As I walked through the forest, the branches and leaves were illuminated by the moonlight, creating a fantastical atmosphere. Walking in the moonlit forest isn't bad, I thought as I reached the river bank again. The river at night, with the bright moon shining, spread its light over the riverbank. I put my hands in my pockets and closed my eyes, listening to the sound of the river. But then, it happened. I heard a voice from somewhere. Peering closely in the direction of the voices, I saw the four women arguing. Coming all the way out here, this is why I can't stand women. My peaceful moment of relaxation ruined, I angrily returned to the vacation home. When I got back to the barbecue area, Mr. Johnson was already there, chatting with the other employees. I sat down and ate my meat, which has gotten cold as the trio returned. They sat away from Mr. Johnson, looking somewhat downcast. Did they leave Emily behind? This is why I dislike women. Thinking that, I throw a charred vegetable down my mouth. Let's wrap this up and move to the rooms for drinks. As night deepened, Mr. Johnson's words prompted the employees to start cleaning up. As everyone worked together to tidy up, Mr. Johnson seemed to notice that Emily was missing. Where's Emily? He asked, looking around. The other employees looked around, but Emily was nowhere to be seen. The area was dimly lit by moonlight. The employees were moved by Mr. Johnson's voice to search for Emily as they split up and dispersed in all directions. As I started to walk to join the search, I noticed the three women. They seemed to be whispering about something. They know something. I thought for a moment but continued my search for Emily. Under the moonlight, I remembered the four of them were at the riverbank. This was the place. I ran towards the river and looked around the rocks where they had been. Then, I saw something floating in the stagnant pool downstream. Squinting, I realized it was a person. I hurriedly ran over the boulders towards the water. There was Emily, floating on her back. You've got to be kidding me. I quickly kicked off my shoes and leather jacket and dove into the water. Hey! Hang in there! I carried Emily to the riverbank and pulled her out of the water. But she was unconscious. I began unbuttoning her clothes and put my jacket on her to keep her warm. But my hands froze for a moment. What? What is this? Emily's body was covered with an overwhelming number of scars that made me want to look away. Her abdomen had countless cuts, and her chest and shoulders were marked with numerous welts. Her shoulders had many red marks that looked like burns. I quickly put my jacket on her to keep her warm, lightly hugging her and rubbing her back. What could have happened to her to cause this? As I contemplated whether to perform CPR, Emily slowly opened her eyes. "Are you okay, Emily?" She seemed disoriented, staring blankly at my face. Luckily, the depth of the pool allowed her to be saved, but it could have been much worse. When Emily realized she was in my arms, she suddenly started struggling. "What? No. Let go. Let me go," she shouted, hitting my head repeatedly. "Hey. Wait. Calm down. It's a misunderstanding. Relax." As I held her wrist to calm her down, she noticed she was wearing my jacket. "What? Where are my clothes?" "No, no. No." She cried harder and struggled more violently, so I let her go. "You stripped me naked. You saw my body. I put my jacket on you right away. I only saw a little. I didn't stare. You're the worst. Ooh-wah." She suddenly burst into tears and started hitting me again. "I had no intention of doing anything to you. I just didn't want you to drown. But, you didn't have to strip me. It's too much. It's awful. Ooh-wah." Thinking how troublesome this was, I picked Emily up in a bridal carry. "Ah. What are you doing? Let me go. You're so noisy. We're going back to the cabin." I carried the struggling Emily in my arms and walked back to the cabin. When I arrived at the cabin, wearing just a t-shirt and carrying the flailing Emily, the employees all stared at me in shock. "What happened to you, Emily?" Then, Mr. Johnson came running over, shouting. I quickly explained what had happened, and he hugged Emily and thanked me. "Thank you for saving Emily." He said that, and then took Emily to the hospital, driving away with her. After that, the mood for drinking in the room dissipated, and we decided to head home the next day. "Excuse me, can we talk?" I called out to the leader of the three women and led her to the side of the cabin. "What do you want to talk about?" She was clearly nervous, so I decided to probe. "I saw what happened." "Why did you do that to Emily?" "Because of you, she fell into the river." "I won't tell anyone, just explain it to me." As I coldly pressed her, she began to recount the events hesitantly. Jealous of Emily for always being close to Mr. Johnson, she and two other colleagues plotted to separate them during the year-end party. When Mr. Johnson stepped away during the barbecue, they took Emily to the river and demanded she break up with him. "I'm not dating him. There's a significant age difference, and you're misunderstanding. Don't play dumb. You're always hanging around him. You're so presumptuous for a newcomer." As they pressured her, Emily stepped back in fear, slipped, and fell into the river. "Help! Glub! Help! Please help!" Emily flailed her arms, desperately calling for help. The three women panicked as they watched her struggle and drift downstream. "Maybe she can't swim? I don't care. She fell in on her own." The leader fled, and the other two followed, running away. "You left her drowning? What do you think a person's life is worth? Enough is enough. I'm sorry." When I glared at her, the terrified senior collapsed to the ground and began trembling. "Apologize to her, not to me. Use your own words and apologize properly," I said, leaving her there. Monday. As I commuted to work on the crowded train, everyone except those three women acted as if nothing had happened. I was preparing for work, pulling out my laptop, when a senior colleague told me to go to the president's office. They probably wanted to ask about what happened at the cabin. When I entered the office, Mr. Johnson, with his sharp gaze, asked me to explain the events at the cabin in more detail. Nervously, I recounted everything. But I didn't do anything inappropriate. It was purely a rescue, and I only undressed her to save her life. "But you saw her scars, didn't you?" I nodded reluctantly. "You need to take responsibility for knowing her secret. Understood?" As I turned pale and froze, Mr. Johnson chuckled. "I'm kidding. I know you're not the kind of person who would do anything inappropriate. But I need to clear up any misunderstandings. Emily is my daughter. I was so shocked that my mouth hung open. She's had a tough life. Mr. Johnson began to quietly recount Emily's story. When he was a senior in high school, he had a girlfriend. She lived with her mother, but when her mother remarried, they moved out of state to live with her new husband. Mr. Johnson wanted to continue their relationship long distance, but soon after she moved, he lost contact with her. His calls went unanswered. And eventually, his number was blocked. It ended up being a forced breakup. But soon after moving in with her stepfather, she discovered she was pregnant. She knew it was Mr. Johnson's child but didn't want to trouble him, so she kept it a secret even from her parents. However, as her pregnancy progressed, her parents noticed her growing belly. They persistently asked who the father was, but she refused to tell them. Since she was already over 22 weeks pregnant, she couldn't get an abortion and eventually gave birth. And that child was Emily. Her stepfather couldn't come to terms with the fact that his partner's child was pregnant. As her relationship with her stepfather grew strained, Emily's mother took Emily and left his house. Determined to live as a single mother, she found it incredibly challenging to raise a child and work at the same time, even at her young age. The stress of childcare and work led her to increasingly take out her frustrations on Emily. From here on, it's a rather distressing story Emily told me. Mr. Johnson began recounting Emily's story. When Emily was in elementary school, her mother got a new boyfriend. Though he initially appeared kind, he soon began to abuse Emily. Her mother, not wanting to alienate him, participated in the abuse. By the time Emily reached middle school, her mother had broken up with him. Relieved, Emily thought she was free, but after breaking up with the man, her mother began to spiral and started drinking heavily. She would suddenly become angry and repeatedly hit Emily. Emily was hit so much by her mother that she almost lost the sight in her left eye. Mr. Johnson said quietly, with a sad expression. "I see, that's why Mr. Johnson always stayed close to Emily and escorted her." Emily's mother would almost always start berating her when she was drunk. "I work so hard for you. Do you understand how difficult it is to make a living? I'm not like you, living carelessly. I'm sorry, Mom, I'm sorry." Whenever something upset her, she would slap Emily's face repeatedly. Emily tried her best to follow her mother's instructions and live quietly to avoid upsetting her, but even then, her mother's temper was unpredictable. "Come here." Saying that, she would grab Emily by the hair and drag her to the bathroom. Horrifyingly, she would push Emily's head into a filled bathtub while still holding her hair. Struggling and gasping for air, Emily would repeatedly apologize, I'm sorry," but her mother never stopped. Eventually, Emily would start choking on the water, coughing violently, which only made her mother slap her face even more. This abuse continued for several years. It became a trauma for her, and to this day, she has a strong fear of water and won't go near any body of water. And those people forced Emily to go to the river. When Emily was in high school, her mother's excessive drinking and exhaustion took a toll on her liver. And she passed away shortly after being hospitalized. Emily learned about Mr. Johnson from her mother's belongings and decided to seek him out for support. He was tormented by the deep sense of loss and guilt upon discovering he had a child and learning that his ex-girlfriend had endured so much to protect him. He quickly took Emily in, trying to make amends by showering her with love and care. When Emily reached adulthood, he hired her as a secretary at his company. After hearing all this, I understood why he was so protective of Emily. Mr. Johnson, usually so resolute and composed, now seemed deeply saddened. Seeing this unusual expression on his face stirred something in me. Remembering how fragile Emily felt when I held her by the river, and imagining the abuse she had endured from her mother made my heart ache unbearably. In high school, I hadn't been moved when a girlfriend cried at our breakup, nor when my behavior made my mother cry, but now, for the first time, I felt a desire to protect someone. Emily probably panicked because you saw the scars she kept hidden. No one else knows about them except me. Those tears Emily shed. How many times has she cried from pain and sadness? Thinking about the endurance and resilience Emily had to muster made me restless. "Mr. Johnson, which hospital is Emily in? Are you going to see her?" I nodded silently. "Thank you. Right now, I'm the only person she trusts enough to talk to. Since you and Emily are close in age, I hope you can be a good companion for her. Just please keep our conversation confidential." I agreed and left the president's office. The next day, I took the afternoon off to visit Emily at the hospital. When I opened the door to her room, Emily was sitting up in bed, reading a book. Noticing me standing at the entrance, she placed the book on the blanket and smiled at me. Despite all the hardships she had faced, Emily's cheerful demeanor was touching. "How are you feeling?" "I'm fine now. The doctor said I can be discharged in 2 or 3 days." Her complexion was good, and her voice was strong. "I'm sorry for saying terrible things after you saved me." "Don't worry about it. Anyone would be startled to see my face right in front of them when they wake up. I'm just glad you're okay." "No, it was my fault for going to the river when it was dark. I'm sorry for the trouble I caused." She didn't mention anything about those 3 women. As I slowly approached her bedside, I noticed the book she had been reading. "Do you like that author?" When I mentioned the author, she looked at the book and started to talk. "Yes, I like stories that make me cry, and his novels often do that, so I read them a lot," she answered shyly. Emily was probably relating these family stories to her own life. Then, in a small voice, Emily spoke while looking at the book. "My father told you about me. It must be disgusting, right? A body covered in scars like mine." I couldn't bear to see her looking so sad. "I don't think it's disgusting at all. From now on, I'll always be by your side. You won't have to feel lonely anymore. You can count on me." She stared at me in silence, her mouth slightly open. "Idiot. What am I saying?" "Oh, I mean, just that, whenever you need someone to talk to when you're feeling down. That's all, no deep meaning behind it." As I fumbled to explain, she started to laugh. "Thank you, I'm happy. But Robert, your face is red." When she smiled and pointed out my red face, I couldn't stop my face from growing even hotter. From that moment on, my cold and indifferent demeanor began to crumble rapidly. During her hospital stay, the leader of the senior female employees visited Emily, apologized, and later submitted her resignation to Mr. Johnson. Although he tried to stop her, she insisted on leaving, saying she couldn't face Emily anymore. A few days later, Emily was discharged and returned to work. During her recovery, I visited her every day. Even after she was discharged, we went out for meals, shopping, and other outings. I, who had never been interested in others, now found myself constantly thinking about Emily. Are her wounds hurting? Is she feeling down? Is she crying somewhere again? On days I couldn't see her, these thoughts filled my mind. I made up my mind. I mean, would you? What? I can't hear you. My heart was pounding, and I could barely speak. "So, would you go out with me?" I mustered all my courage to confess for the first time at a cafe after work. She was silent for a moment, then smiled shyly and said, "Yes." After confessing to Emily, I reported it to Mr. Johnson. He decided it would be best to inform the employees about his relationship with Emily and our relationship. The female employees were shocked to learn Mr. Johnson had a child. But soon, some of them started vying for the position of his wife. You read this kind of novel too? I thought you only read hard-boiled fiction." Mr. Johnson noticed the novel I had borrowed from her on my desk and asked me. "Yeah, I've been reading these kinds of novels a lot lately." "I see. Robert, could you come to my office for a moment?" Following his lead, I entered the office, where Emily sat at a desk in the corner, smiling at me. "Actually, one of the female employees wants to discuss something with me." Mr. Johnson sighed heavily, looking exhausted. "How many is that now?" "4. Being too approachable with the employees might not be a good idea." I smiled wryly, and he asked me to take his place for the consultation. "Why me? Don't they want to talk to you alone?" "Exactly. Why should Robert go?" Emily suddenly chimed in. "Hey, don't look so scary, both of you." Fine, I'll go." He slumped and left the room. "I don't need 2 mothers, you know." Emily threw that teasing remark at Mr. Johnson's back, and we both smiled as we watched him leave.